Hold it. This is a shelter short. We don't have time for all this. Speed it up.
Here we are again. It's summertime in Maine. We don't live in Maine. I'm sure it is summertime in Maine. It's summertime here.
We live in the West Coast, Maine, Oregon.
Yeah. We're here today to do something a little bit different. Welcome to the shelter, everyone. We're going to give Lisa the day off today, so she'll come back refreshed and hopefully in a better mood.
It'll just be human ramblings today. Enjoy.
We're going to try doing sort of a shorter show than normal, something that's a little less formalized. We're not sure what we're going to call it yet. I mean, we're probably going to call it like a mini-sode, but we don't have like a cool name for the type of show it is. You know, we're kind of thinking
Shelter Short
or
Shelter Short.
If you're hearing this right now, in the comments somewhere, kind of maybe give us an idea of like what would be fun. Oh yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble shutting up. So,
which I guess we've had our whole life.
Yeah. These smaller episodes are going to cover things like maybe a piece of music or a bit of advertising, maybe a comic book or something smaller that's not like a full feature film or anything like that. This episode is about advertising. And so today we've brought forth 2 commercials that we found that surprisingly, when we first found them, actually, we didn't pick them because of their sort of 60s nostalgia. We just sort of both found commercials that happened to cross over that time divide.
Yeah, while we were looking for something else, these are things that we came across and we're like, we can't use them in the episode now, but let's save them. At some point, we want to talk about this.
Yeah, we originally did talk about these commercials in our very first episode.
That ran a little long.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. We just had to cut it for time. It wasn't the episode was, already a little bit over time.
And it really had nothing to do with the episode whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think that having like 7 episodes under our belt now, I think it's a lot better that we talk about it now. I think that you would not have enjoyed what we put out in that first episode.
But now you will.
For some reason we're better. I don't know why.
So what are these mini bits?
Oh man.
Mini bites.
These Triscuit bits. That's a terrible name. I'm not using it. So the first one was one that you had found, and it's a commercial for Honda by legendary Hanna-Barbera, friend and worker with her.
Animator director,
Yeah.
Carl Urbano.
Yes. Carl Urbano.
Urbano.
I think there's an O on the end, so I think it's Carl Urbano.
Over the years, many cars have rolled across the drawing board of cartoonist Carl Urbano. Still, Mr. Urbano's favorite car is a Honda. He and his family own 10 Hondas in all. So you might say, Honda has helped draw the family together.
But the reason that we were attracted to this was because the commercial, one, it's all about the Jetsons and the Flintstones, sort of like these cartoons from the 60s that all of us grew up watching, the reboots in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so I think it sort of played to this idea of nostalgia. It played to this idea. And in the commercial, too, one thing I really enjoyed about the commercial, which I think a lot of people like sometimes when you see a little behind the scenes. So we're watching him sort of sketch out the Jetsons, like family car, the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Only to then be like, oh, wait a minute. Now he's drawing a Honda.
Yeah. Now, and it's an 87 Honda.
Yep.
I wouldn't probably have known it was a Honda specifically because it really had that like boxy Chrysler.
It wasn't until he drew 10 of them that you started to think, oh, I guess these are all Hondas.
Yeah. And the commercial is essentially letting us know that Carl Urbano owns 10 Hondas. His entire family owns
Here's
Hondas.
a guy, a lot of different cars have rolled across his animation table over the years. And of all those, our favorites, the Jetsons and the Flintstones, his favorite, not selling out, is a Honda. He loves to draw Hondas so much that he's drawing 10 of them for him and his entire family.
Yeah, and at the end, it's like all of these Hondas lined up right on the beach.
taking up all the parking.
Yeah.
Family reunion style.
Yeah, and so you have his entire family, all their Hondas, they're at the beach for some reason. And that's the takeaway, is that if you're looking for a car, well, Carl Urbano likes Honda.
And while we think we're celebrating Carl Urbano and his shows and everything he's done over the years, the commercial sort of ends going, you could even say Honda drew the family together. So it's like they've made it about them.
Yeah, Honda is taking credit for Carl Urbano's family being, I guess, a close-knit group.
Like you want the Micro Machine guy to be like at the very end, no car was ever designed or drawn by Carl Urbano whatsoever. In fact, this family may never have even driven one themselves. The lawyers hadn't got involved yet, I guess.
How you doing? Looking for a new car? Well, you came to the right place. I got 2-doors, 4-doors, compacts, mid-size, luxury models, hard tops, convertibles, vans, trucks in every color, red, blue, yellow, green, and a buy. Got a deal for you, because if you buy today, got super financing available. So what do you say? We got a deal?
But yeah, the thing about the commercial is it's like less than 30 seconds, and we looked for a longer cut because we thought there had to be some sort of longer cut.
I mean, because, we're
commercial.
celebrating the life of legendary cartoon animator
Carl
Carl
Urbano.
Urbano. Not that Honda can draw the family together.
Yeah.
For the Danny Tanner pun.
We couldn't find a longer version of this. And so now I'm left wondering who at Honda in the marketing department or whoever greenlit this, like, how did this come to pass? How did Carl Urbano's name get into the conversation to the point of where they're like, yes, let's put this guy out to sell our Hondas?
And I'll think part of what it was, and we'll get to what Matt selected next, but it plays into this, is in the 80s, all of a sudden cable television starting to get bigger, and just like TikTok or Instagram, cable television needs content. They need to get you to keep watching, while every once in a while they throw out some original show that they're trying to develop or create. We go from the big three channels of the 40s and 50s, and to all of a sudden 100 channels with like nothing to watch. So they all of a sudden, the television airwaves, like for me, it was a lot of like TNT Superstation, TBS Superstation, TNT, a lot of these stations that had their own little specific niche. During the daytime, all they showed were reruns. And so I grew up watching lots of Gilligan Island, The Addams Family, Get Smart.
Yeah.
So by the time you start seeing some of this stuff pop up, and I think why Carl Urbano fits for us is at the same time, we're all watching cartoons, like we're watching the Jetsons, we're watching the Flintstones, which also were shows from the 60s, but we're watching the new reboots while also watching the old reruns.
Yeah, because I can't remember when Boomerang started. But
Boomerang started way later.
That was in the late 90s, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
96.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the 80s, in the early mid 80s, you start seeing all these reruns of old 60s shows. You start seeing the reruns of the old cartoons.
Well, and they were doing, some of them were even like new versions of other shows like Flintstone Kids, Pup Named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and so this is where Carl Urbano really shines, is starting in from like 79 all the way through like the 90s. He's doing all of these reboots. He's doing like Flintstones. He's doing Scooby-Doo with Scrappy-Doo, which we talked about on the last episode.
Yeah.
He even does like a Fonz and the Happy Day cartoon. He does like a Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley Happy Days cartoon. But then there was like some originals that we loved. Like I think some of you might have grown, who are our age, would remember the Shirt Tells, GoBots, the Snorks, Monchichis. These were all classics.
And he's directing these. He's not doing the artwork in these.
Yeah,
ones.
at this point
is
he's
a director.
directing, which leads us to believe he was an animator on a lot of these original shows. But it's sometimes hard to find in his bio just where it starts. Like a lot of his credits on IMDb really just focus on his directing years.
Yeah.
Which in the 80s, he would have been like a 70-year-old guy directing cartoons.
Yeah. Well, and when I was looking him up, he had like he started mostly in the 30s, like the early 30s, and he was uncredited almost all the way through the 40s into the 50s.
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't gain actual notoriety, like his name on a thing, till almost the late 40s.
Yeah.
And that's crazy because he has, you're right, like a big breadth of work if you're like willing to look for it.
But back then it was like, it was like a sweat, not a sweatshop, but it was a studio system. You were a cog in the machine. So we know like one of his first, we know that he drew on the very first, it was called Puss Gets the Boots. And it's the first appearance of Tom and Jerry, We know that he met Hanna-Barbera early on and was working with Ray Patterson, who created or was like one of the original guys for the Jetsons.
Yeah.
So you have a feeling that he was around that time. And all this would have been when he was in his late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
So he definitely had lots of work before that got him to these shows in the first place when Hanna-Barbera becomes this powerhouse in the 60s.
Yeah. And we talked about like doing the minimal amount of research I did for this. We did find out that there was another group of people doing those early cartoons. So like you had Disney's Silly Symphonies, you had Warner Brothers doing Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. And then we found out that he had worked on something that I'd never heard of, which was for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer called Happy Harmonies. And you look at some of the work from here and you've definitely seen Happy Harmonies if you didn't even know it was that show.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has a signature bear that he does. And he has a lot of great animation that he did on that again, I think went uncredited early on.
And then we also saw that he did a bunch of cartoons in the 50s with John Sutherland, who produced it. And a lot of these were pretty interesting. These were sort of like, I don't know what you want to call them, like government films or...
Yeah, it's like that early government edutainment where it's sort of like something that... It's like when they make those cartoons where they tell kids to get under the table for an atomic blast.
You know, so that desk can protect you from annihilation, destruction, and...
But yeah, he had made the A is for Adam.
Yeah, which is very interesting. This thing, I mean, we do not get this sort of educational cartoons anymore. I mean, it really, in an entertaining, digestible like way, it really explains how atoms and neutrons work.
But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force. Because here, in fact, is the answer to a dream as old as man himself. A giant of limitless power at man's command. And where was it science found that giant? In the atom, a particle so infinitely small that it takes over 100 billion atoms to make up the head of a pin.
Yeah.
Protons. And they just, I mean, you have different, you know.
Well, it's 14 minutes. It's incredible animation.
Yeah, you have atoms dancing. They all have their own characters as they transmorphite into different.
He both describes the industry of creating atomic energy, and
all the
this,
happy accidents along the way that kind of start leading up to like, wait a minute, we could do something more with this.
So it's like it's this weird mix because it was produced by General Electric, right?
Yeah.
They had put it together. They'd asked for it. And so you have this mix of like, history of like literally what led up to it. Then you have all this anthropomorphized science, like each element has its own body and its own big head that shows like how many neutrons and protons and everything are in them.
Some of them are crazy out of control,
and
only
some of
to
them
then
act
be
different.
tamed.
Yeah. And then they go through the physical process of how they create a nuclear reaction and create fission. They talk about how they create
And it's so
fission.
detailed. In 1953, you're like, how many other nations are you teaching how to like the process on how to make their own atomic bomb?
Yeah, this
is very detailed stuff.
I'd wondered, like, is this something you really want to put out there? Like
the Kremlin's rolling cartoons? Like,
yeah, aren't you worried that China and Russia are going to see how easy fission is? Or maybe they weren't worried. They were already.
Well, I mean, at this point,
it's
already like, you know, around like 8 years after the top. So I'm sure a lot of that
it's technology, out there, Jerry.
That's already out there for some countries, but I'm sure there's some other countries who weren't even thinking about nuclear programs going, oh, we could do this too. Like, hey.
The northern part of Korea is going, very interesting.
Yeah, well, then there's another cartoon, which this one was really, this is out there. This, you know, it's 53, so these are the Eisenhower years. We're past the New Deal. We're past all these government programs that saved us from the Depression. And now it's the 53. People are riding high. And why do I have to pay so much in taxes? And this whole cartoon really breaks down on why you should cut taxes. And the process of cutting taxes, you should cut all those pesky benefits you get from taxes. Because if we don't, we're going to be a nation taken over by the Red Scare.
Yes. I watched this morning and I can't believe how relatable a cartoon from 53 still is. Like what it is essentially, and I'll try to put as many of these up on Instagram as I can. You have a rich, well-to-do gentleman, a banker looking type. You have kind of a window washer,
factory city
worker,
industry,
a guy, a John Everyman.
Yeah.
Sort of blue collar worker man. And then you have the farmer, the classic farmer.
John Q. Farmer.
Yes. And they all get a letter talking about how their taxes are going to go up, and they're all furious. And then they go to the real life Uncle Sam, the actual top hat, white beard Uncle Sam, and they complain about, hey, you're already taxing the crap out of me.
And Uncle Sam's like, you know what? We wouldn't be taxing you so much if all of you guys hadn't got used to all these benefits. Some that might be good, some that just don't make any common sense anymore.
My income tax is murder. Rubber, you gone crazy or something? You're driving me to the wall. Can't pay it. Crops were good. Where do you think I'm gonna get the money?
Now, boys, take it easy. Don't blow your tops.
You're spending us into bankruptcy. Do you think money grows on bushes, bub? Listen, Uncle. Cut my taxes or else.
I'd like to oblige, but you fellas seem to forget. The more benefits you demand, the higher your taxes have to be to pay the bills.
It's really interesting because
And all these industries, they quickly turn on each other. They're like, why can't Mr. Rich Moneybags? So like, let's just tax the rich.
Yeah,
like we are today.
And they have a great, he goes through this great explanation of, if you tax the rich guy too much, then his prices
they
are
do a
gonna
real
go up.
sympathetic on, well, here's all here's all, these rich robber barons.
Yeah.
Here's all the taxes they pay. Here's everything that they have to invest in. So at the very end, the only way they could handle this is to raise your prices.
Yeah, and then they go in and they talk about the farmer and the farm subsidies, and hey, if you want all these subsidies, who's paying for it?
Yeah, and city industry is going, yeah, farmer, you're doing pretty well for yourself already.
Yeah. How are you doing out there, farmers? You feel like you're doing really well.
But then the very end, though, they really just, all of a sudden, after all these arguments, they go, and if you're not careful, the Red Army could take over. It's like, Red Scare.
Parts of it are old timey,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, nobody'd ever make a cartoon like this, and that's kind of it's kind of fun because it's taboo.
And then
to,
part
like,
of it's a
modern
little
language.
frustrating because you're just like, we haven't really progressed much
No.
past. Like, we're still having these same arguments.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's like, oh my gosh, like look at Uncle Sam saying, hey, well, you got too high on the hog with these fat benefits, man. But then on the other hand, it's like, this is crazy relatable for 53.
Yeah.
It has this twofold effect. And yeah, it was good to see. And on top of that, the animation was really good.
The animation was, really outstanding.
Go
a lot
Carl.
of fun.
Who knew that somebody that I didn't know anything about from a
30-second Honda commercial.
Yeah, a Honda commercial that I had never seen in 87. I had never seen, as far as I remember.
We could have saw it a million times. We wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah. And now I know a ton of more things and have so many more things I can go look up because of just thinking about this one commercial.
But it was very relatable because we were like, just the same way there's a lot of 60s and 70s TV shows that were popping up in the 80s. A lot of the cartoons. And for us, I think it was, watching original Jetsons or even the new Jetsons. For us, it just felt like our show. It didn't feel like you were watching your parents' cartoon. Like for me, I really equated my parents to like Howdy Doody, not to Flintstones and Jetsons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I never equated my parents to watching cartoons ever.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't a cartoon guy. He never really talked to me about television shows, and I had no idea what my mom liked.
Yeah, my dad was very much more a reader. He was pushing Lord of the Rings on us when we were in the early 80s, even before you watch, the Lord of the Rings cartoon.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, my dad was definitely a reader over watching cartoons.
Now, most atoms of most elements are content with their lot in life. We speak of them as being stable, but others are busy day and night, being what science calls radioactive.
To transition into my commercial, where I would say this, where Andy's commercial had a lot of interesting things to talk about. and a lot of like cultural touchstones that I think you could go out and look at and get some practical education on. My commercial is pure pop culture brain rot.
Nostalgia puff.
It is absolutely the deepest nostalgia button. People always complain now that people are doing like what's called member berries. You ever heard of this term?
No, you gotta explain it to me.
Member berries is like, remember this, remember that, remember this, remember when that happened? And a lot of modern media is doing that. And I agree that they're relying a lot on nostalgia. No disrespect to, the newest Ghostbusters movie. I actually kind of liked it, but I also see where people go, well, all they did was just show this. And they're just like, hey, here's a proton pack. Hey, here's this. And it was showing a thing without expanding the story.
Yeah, then it brings you into the story. So if you already are a fan of this, you're just like, all right, happy, let's move on with this. If you're watching it for the first time, you're like, well, I don't see how I'm supposed to get involved into or how are you supposed to emotionally get me into this?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is, so I don't think the commercial I picked isn't necessarily that, but at the same time, things like you said, things don't change. Like how the taxes are still, we're still talking about them the same way.
Because mine had behind the scenes, it had slow music, nostalgia, it had family, it had history. Matt, what does yours have?
Well, mine has cheeseburgers.
Just cheeseburgers?
No, they're double cheeseburgers.
Oh, was that a reunion of the double cheeseburger?
Well, we're going to talk about that because we had to figure out exactly what was being sold here and why. So the commercial that I chose was actually a campaign from 1988 that moved into 1989. And that there is a reason that I'm specifying that. And what they did is McDonald's was bringing back the double cheeseburger, and they were reuniting it with the new large fries that were on the menu. And so they thought what would be a good idea is they'll create an entire campaign where they'll bring back famous characters from the 1960s and reunite them in the commercial.
McDonald's is bringing back all your old favorites for a reunion. A big double cheeseburger reunion.
It's great to be back.
We're reuniting the big taste of 2 all-beef patties.
Ooh-wee.
And golden melted cheese.
My, that's a lovely double cheeseburger you're eating, Mrs. Cleaver.
Thank you, Eddie.
Together with a new large order of crisp golden French fries.
I love French food.
So hurry, it's only for a limited time.
Oh.
It's McDonald's big double cheeseburger reunion.
Y'all come back now, here?
And of course, at this point, we've all been watching the reruns, so we recognize these bigger, larger than life 1960s.
Because these guys are, so we have Don Adams, Maxwell Smart, which ran from 65 to 70.
Well, it's about time.
We have Al Lewis coming back as Grandpa Munster, and his show only ran from 64 to 66. Bob Denver Gilligan from Gilligan's Island, 64 to 67. Barbara Billingsley and Ken Osmond, both from Leave It to Beaver. So you have Mrs. Cleaver, right? And they have Eddie Haskell.
No Wally and the Beef.
No, we decided either they didn't want to come back
or they weren't invited.
But I have some information about why I think it's weird that they didn't come back for this, because it seems like it would be super easy money.
Yeah.
They were already reprising their role on TV. We'll go into it. And finally, we have Buddy Ebsen, who was Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies. And
he does a really great job on this.
Oh, he does. And his show was on from 62 to 71. So the only reason I want to bring that up is because I do want to establish that this was characters specifically targeted from the 1960s who are now brought into the 1980s to sell these cheeseburgers and large fries.
Yeah. And these characters are already pretty large. Like, we're already watching them on daytime reruns. They've already popped up or were parodied in movies in the 80s. So it's out there. We're all seeing these characters. We all recognize. So by the time McDonald does it, they know they're not introducing you to something you hadn't seen before, but they're catching the wave of this nostalgia boom.
Yeah. And one of the reasons we wanted to bring this commercial up now is because this actually transitions really well into a future episode that we're going to be doing where we're going to be reviewing Back to the Beach.
Which a lot of these characters pop up in.
Exactly. You're going to see some of these actors in that movie, you know, and they're not reprising their roles, but they're kind of doing an aside. Like each one is sort of like, you remember me from this show, even though I'm being a different character.
Yeah, and again, you were either watching these guys on daytime television on reruns, you were catching them at Nick at Night.
Mm-hmm. So the commercials themselves are a delight because each one of them is each character acting perfectly their character from their show.
Yeah, this isn't them just putting it on and doing a cash grab and just trying to remember the character. This feels like they've been on the road for the last year and a half and they have a little fine-tuned, whether it was conventions, whether it was being popping up in movies, or they just never let go of these iconic characters. But I mean, the comedy, like what they're saying is just so crisp and right out of the show.
Yeah. What it feels like is that like they spent an entire day shooting with these guys and then they just took the best of what they got and then put that in the commercial and kind of filled in the spots where the announcer wasn't talking. Well, yeah, I think Don Adams and Al Lewis specifically, those guys were just on point. They were energized. Like seeing Grandpa Munster really like back in action doing his whole bit. He's doing that laugh. You know, and he's got that great smile. He's in his full makeup and costume.
And he's giving it his all. You almost feel like he's auditioning for a future movie or something.
Yeah, at one point he puffs into appearance. He puffs into the McDonald's in a puff of smoke. He makes Don Adams' burger and fries disappear with electricity.
Don't tell me this won't last. It won't last. I asked you not to tell me that.
He's using magic.
Yeah. Committing 100% to it.
Well, and I like that McDonald's committed 100%. They're like, yeah, he does have magic. He would be able to do this. That's awesome. I was actually surprised that Don Adams didn't get to do some sort of bit with like
the answering his shoe.
Yeah, like answering his shoe, or like maybe one of the burgers was a phone, like a secret phone.
I know.
Or he got to throw a wrapper away and it explodes.
Yeah.
Something like that would have been really great. But yeah, so one of the main commercials that introduced this campaign, all the characters are coming to McDonald's in Jed Clampett's hillbilly mobile, and they're all stacked up just like how the old show used to open with the Beverly Hillbillies. And you have Grandpa on top in Grandma's chair just cackling, and you just knew right away this commercial is going to be good.
Yeah.
And it does not disappoint. There's so many different takes. You really need to watch all of them. Like you can go on YouTube and you can find a collection of these and they play them right in a row. And the reason you need to watch all of them is because it, like we said, it looks like they did a whole day of shooting and they were able to get all these different takes. Like Gilligan, he has like 2 different ways he says, I love French food. And so I'm just loving watching these guys do the best they can. Eddie Haskell is hilarious. He does his big Eddie Haskell laugh. And he has like a couple of different things where he, you know, does his, oh, I think that's a lovely burger, Mrs. Cleaver, you know, and she's like, oh, thank you, Eddie. And then he has one where he says that,
may I say, this is going to be a lovely year.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie. But they do it like exasperated, like they would do on.
You can
the
just
show.
tell that. I mean, these were high energy. They put some budget and some time into it. You think, you know, or at least it was very exciting for them. I think it wasn't just an afterthought commercial.
Well, yeah. And now that I think about it, actually, one of the commercials, and this is why I brought up the fact that it was 88 through 89, because when I was first looking this up, I only thought it was an 89 commercial because they have one of the commercials opens with Al Lewis blowing a horn and going, let's party. And it says 89 for 89. So it's like the double cheeseburger is 89 cents.
Gilligan even says 89 cents. I'll pay for $1. I might even get change. Maybe.
I think. But so I thought it was just a commercial for 1989. Because we were talking about how amazing 1989
But the campaign
is.
must have been so successful that it rolled over from 88 $2.89.
It went from December 26th to January 21st. And because we were trying to figure out why they're even doing this. Like, don't they always have a double cheeseburger? And it turns out they didn't. They were bringing back the double cheeseburger and they were reuniting it for a limited time with these large fries to both promote the double cheeseburger and the new large fries being permanently on the menu. So it was a weird limited time for this double cheeseburger. I honestly thought they had one forever.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why Wendy's used to say, "Where's the beef?" You know, like they got rid of the double cheeseburger. McDonald's just has these single patties. You go to the other guy, they're the king of whatever. But Wendy's was all about where's the beef. So maybe
I love that they were, dude. Wendy's has been throwing shade for so long. Like, no wonder their Twitter game was so good.
And they did it with that nice, harmless Dave Thomas, Midwestern guy.
Well, yeah, but then you have like an old lady who you can't yell at old ladies. No. And she's just asking a question, where's the beef? That's just all she's asking.
She's asking what the rest of America was thinking at the time.
Exactly. But so when we're looking at this commercial, one of the things, besides the fact that Al Lewis had so much energy, even at his age, to playing that character, I was like, how long has it been since some of these guys have reprised this role? Because a lot of them felt like they just jumped right back into it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big deal. And so I was looking it up, and Gilligan and the Skipper both had been in a commercial where they pretended to get washed ashore on the banks of the river in Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay.
And it was in 1985.
Skipper, I think we found it.
Ah, Gilligan.
There's a bridge and a hill.
Does the bridge go up and down like this, little buddy?
Yeah.
Are there thousands of cheering people, Gilligan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's Duluth! We'll see you in Duluth.
So he had played Gilligan again, only like 3 years earlier. So he wasn't too unfamiliar with the role. And I remember watching those Gilligan's Island movies. Do you remember watching any of those? Gilligan's Island would make like a movie. I think they made 3 different ones. And it was like 3 different versions of how they got off the island. One of them, they rebought the island. Mr. Howe bought the island and made it into an island resort. So,
oh, wow. No, I never saw any of those.
I can't remember when those came out. I think they might have been late 70s, I think they might have been even the early 80s. So it's like he wasn't that far out of being Gilligan at the time, you know?
I can see he buys the island. It's going to be this great resort, but he runs out of money during construction. So nobody ever comes back to the island, and then they're stranded again. No, I don't know.
I think there is one movie where that ends up happening. One of the ends is like they end up getting stranded again somewhere. But then I looked it up, and there was an actual show called The New Leave It to Beaver.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the I don't. I barely remember this.
I remember this briefly, but I don't think it was worth sticking around with.
I know, but it was on from 1983 to 1989, and it had the full cast.
Yeah.
That's why I think it was weird that Wally and the Beav didn't come back for this commercial.
And they were also in they were also in.
Yeah, they were in Back to the Beach in 87.
Yeah.
Wally and the Beav versus Mrs. Cleaver and Eddie Haskell. Who would be better for that commercial?
Yeah.
You know, in a weird way, those two, the Beav and Wally, almost aren't character actor enough to maybe bring that high energy.
Yeah, and Eddie Haskell definitely brings that.
Yeah, he's got that iconic look and characterization. And so they might have just wanted these two anyway. But so that show going on till 89, he would have been very familiar with still playing that role. Even though he was playing an older Eddie Haskell, like he still would have had his chops, you know, playing that character.
Well, I think you see a lot of these guys, a lot of the characters doing reprisals in the 80s or coming back or doing commercials because none of them got residuals from the original shows.
Yeah.
Like they were part of that after residuals became a thing.
Yeah, they're like, hey, you did it the first time.
So that's why I think
we paid you then.
You probably saw some of these people also over the years doing like conventions or other things and just keeping sharp on those. Like vaudeville actors, just they found a character and they stayed sharp with it.
Yeah. I stayed up too late chasing
this guy's
rabbit
been
hole.
diving all night.
I know.
deep
So
diving.
if I sound a little crazy at this point, it's because when I was looking at some of the other people, I didn't really look up anything for Judd Clampett because I guess I'm not concerned about him. Like he's a fine guy. I noticed he didn't have his mustache in this commercial though. That's something you will know. Buddy Ebsen does not have his classic Jed mustache.
But it would be hard to tell because he brings the character. He just brings it.
Yeah. And as far as I know, Maxwell Smart, he had not done that character in a while, probably outside of little one-offs. And
Even though he
bits.
had been, he was still, and he actually was making, I feel like a handful of appearances in the 80s, just as like characters himself, not just his own character. There was a part of me that was like, come on, McDonald's, they spent a big budget on this. You couldn't have done one where, you know, Don Adams and Maxwell Smart is going through every single secret door, only to have the last door be the McDonald doors.
That would have been awesome.
I mean, that's just, you know, that's just me, but.
Oh my gosh. Or like, he can't get through the last door that'll give him like the secret, you know, new double cheeseburger recipe.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. God damn it. That'd be good. Well, see, now this commercial sucks.
It could have been so much better.
No, but so I started thinking about Al Lewis, and the reason I focused on him was one, I think he really had that breakout energy. I hadn't seen him as Grandpa Munster in a long time, and also I share Al Lewis's birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know.
And I'll say this again. He put so much energy in this. I really felt like he was like, I'm going to come back. This is my comeback. I'm going to like audition for a movie. You guys are going to love this character so much.
Well, yeah, no, but here's the funny thing. So I was looking up when the last time he had actually been Grandpa Munster. And the last time he had played that character specifically was in 1981's The Munsters' Revenge.
Oh, wow.
Where he and Herman and Lily, those three actors, had come back and portrayed their actual characters. Then through the 80s, he would be Al Grandpa Lewis, and he hosted Super Scary Saturday on TBS.
Yeah, I could see that kind of an Elvira Mistress of the Dark kind of thing.
And that's exactly what he did from 87 to 89. He was doing that. He would wear like the cape, but it's like, again, he couldn't be called Grandpa Munster, but it was basically as close as you could
He's like,
get.
I'm the character, but I don't own the IP.
Yeah.
But you know,
Safe enough not to sue.
Safe enough not to sue in
And
these
so-
litigious times.
Yeah, he ended up making Grandpa's Monster movie, which is a straight-to-video movie, 1988. And I think it was like a series of like monster movie clips that he hosted. I think he made a couple of those.
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking, Andy.
You started thinking Gremlins 2.
Yes, exactly. That is where I went next. I thought Grandpa Munster doing these scary Saturday morning bits is how they got to the character from Gremlins 2.
Which again, Joe Dante. You know Joe Dante's probably watching a lot of these late night movies anyways.
Yes, that, because his name was Uncle Fred. And
Another
I was like,
safe, litigious times. We're clear.
And I was just like, I am going down the craziest rabbit hole right now. The things are coming together. Colors are forming. Dimensions are changing right now. And then I ended up watching way too much of the movie My Grandpa is a Vampire.
Which I had seen this VHS cover a lot as a kid. It was one of those things, you saw it at a video store. You probably had the same experience.
Yeah.
You see it, you think it's kind of cool, but maybe I'll rent it next time.
Yeah, no, and we were talking about that because the cover is blue and there's two kids at the bottom. They're looking up at a moon and it's Al Lewis's face wearing sunglasses and he's got vampire teeth and he looks awesome. But it's also, you know, you're looking at it. When I was a kid, I remember looking at that and I'm like, my grandpa's a vampire. Okay. Like, I don't really care. And I vaguely recognized Al as, you know, somebody I knew from television.
See, I recognized him. I just recognized, I'm going to go, that's Grandpa Munster.
Yeah.
But it was also that sort of like, but do I want to see Grandpa Munster in a movie?
Exactly. Well, yeah, because I think that, you know what? Okay, that was 1992. I would have known that.
You would have known.
I would have known that was him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, but he's not playing Grandpa Munster. He's just being a vampire. So
you walk by the VHS. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. When did you finally watch the movie?
I watched the movie last night at about 1:45 a.m. and I fast forwarded through a good portion of it. But the reason I actually watched it is because I was looking it up on IMDb, and they had one frame where it's two kids and what's clearly Al Lewis in the middle, and they're walking up to a McDonald's.
Mr. McDonald, here we are. Now, gotta look like I fit in with the crowd, huh? Yes, sirree, yeah?
Grandpa, you look cool.
Give me 5, and 5 makes 10, and here we go.
And out front of the McDonald's is Constable Big Mac's big cage face. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
You crawl up into his face and you'd run around.
Yeah.
They had an original 4-armed Grimace like bird cage. And then they also had an original, which I've never seen. I've never seen this thing in my life. An original Hamburglar swing set.
Oh, wow.
This thing is terrifying. So think about the original Hamburglar with the weird long nose and like mouse teeth. Think about if you extended his legs super high into the air and then put his arms out as far as you could to hang swings from.
No, I remember that because it was, I grew up in the Northwest as a kid. So like, Washington, and then eventually Oregon for high school. But I did spend time in California as a kid. Like we're military based moving around. California, those playgrounds were a lot better than the Northwest because there'd be sunshine. It'd be nice. They're going to last. So I do remember, like, as a kid, going to different McDonald's and being like, this one's way more spectacular than that one. Or, or sometimes on road trips, if you went through the Midwest, back in those days when your parents drove you across country to go from place to place.
I do remember that.
In the Midwest, they'd always test different foods that never made it back to the coast.
Yep.
So I remember there was a time when they actually had mini corn dogs on the menu. And I thought I was like, and we were just moving cross country. I experienced it once outside of Denver, I think. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh, these are going to make it. Never popped up anywhere on the coast.
That's amazing. Yeah, the Midwest always ends up getting some cool thing, some like 2-headed chicken leg or something.
And then somehow they never seem to test so well. Like,
yeah, it's like a what is it? Like a bucket of like hamburger soda or something. I don't know. But they're always like, let's have somebody in Iowa try this before we get it out anywhere else. See what happens.
And then you go to Europe. I remember when you're first going to Europe when you're in their 20s, it's like, you go to like Italy and they would have like, mozzarella cheese and red sauce chicken sandwich. Or you go to France and it would be like fresh fruit smoothies and all this. And then you go back to the US and you're like,
I remember getting off a bus into British Columbia. Because we were going to Vancouver, British Columbia, and in the bus station was a McDonald's, and right there on the menu was the McPizza, and I was like, they have pizza up here? This place is crazy. They got like dollar bills that are coins, and they've got magic McPizzas. This is a nuts place. This is truly upside down. Yeah. So I watched that movie. I watched it so you guys.
And the highlight was them going to McDonald's, which was why we just went on that McDonald's tirade.
I got to tell you, that is exactly when I stopped watching. I saw the McDonald's. It looked cool, and the movie takes place in Australia too. So it's like you're seeing this kind of weird Australian McDonald's, which is like a little bit more lean and clean than some of our McDonald's. But yeah, it was cool. They had this big plastic character of Captain Crook out front. It was like the inside got like the 1992 update, but somehow all of the other materials stayed from like the late 70s.
It's been pretty crazy out lately. With this shortage, that shortage. I'm going through a money shortage.
I hear you.
That's not funny. So when I'm hungry, I head for the old golden arches. Example, I get a hamburger, regular fries, and Coca-Cola for less than $1. Thanks. Today, getting mileage out of my money is important, and at McDonald's, I do. I believe it. Besides, I'm a nut about French fries.
You deserve a break today at McDonald's.
Well, I mean, I think that's as much as I have brought to this. We're kind of heading into that. If we keep going, we're going to defeat the purpose of the episode.
Yeah. So I think I'm Andy.
I'm Matt.
And I think that's all we have for you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming down to the shelter today for our
Shelter Short,
or whatever we're going to call this. Again, go to our Instagram at shelter.from.oblivion. You will see the commercial that we're talking about, and I'll actually add the Carl Urbano commercial. So that'll be up there for you as
and
a
I
reel.
think you should look up Carl Urbano and just look at some of his, like some of the cartoons and some of the stuff he did in the 50s. Some of it's just an interesting viewing, and Matt will put some of that up on the page also to go reference and find.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there'll be something there for, when you hear this, there'll be something for you to look at when you get over there. And then also go back and listen to, if you haven't listened to our, we shelter with iconic 80s dogs, because Carl Urbano worked with Scooby and Scrappy Doo.
And the Pound Puppies.
Yeah, and the Pound Puppies. We don't talk about the Pound Puppies in the show, but we do talk about Scrappy Doo.
True.
And I think I do a pretty damn good job of it.
Pound Puppies were on the list. They got cut they'll probably be on the second or third version of that.
Yep. But yeah, and then if you can, please go in to whatever format you listen to and leave a comment or leave a like or something like that. We're just trying to generate a little bit of a community, and we're trying to it always benefits us and how we're found when people, give us positive reviews or leave comments or anything like that.
Yeah, so wherever you podcast, if you've been listening to some of these episodes and you like it, or there's some things you want us to change or other top chat, say, hey, talk about this. We will always talk about things nonstop.
I'll never stop talking.
Just give us some suggestions, and we'll try to eventually hit them all.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. And we are out.